Good morning.
And we are live. What's going on, guys?
Good morning, gents.
Good morning, guys.
We have a full house. We always go quiet after we go live because there's so much shit we talk about. Like, okay, we're live now. We have to talk like we're live.
Responsible.
Although in previous weeks, you just went live mid-conversation, so I watch it on playback. I'm like, what the hell are we talking about? You catch us like mid-sentence.
Yeah, sometimes we'll do that too.
Yeah.
I learned that trick from Aaron Cleary. He used to do that a lot when we were talking behind the scenes.
It's kind of like in school, you're yapping during class, and then the teacher asks you to stand up and say something, and you're tongue-tied.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got nothing. It's okay. I'll take a 0.
So, Rich, before the guys came on a minute ago, I think I'd mentioned that some of the outside views of a men's community, you know, the people have some negative views, and I just said this is my 4th Saturday morning waking up without alcohol, because a bunch of us, just the shit we shoot back and forth within the community, we're kind of like, especially some of the younger guys, just said, look, we don't like the feeling on the weekend of having binge drank, and we don't want to give up alcohol. So a bunch of us started a signal chat where we all started to keep each other in check and just moderated our alcohol. And as I said, like 4th Saturday morning in a row, waking up fresh as a daisy.
Yeah, it's difficult to be productive and focused when you've been smashing them back. I mean, look, I'll be honest. That live that I did last Sunday morning with Andrew Tate, the night before, I was at a Christmas party with the guys from the Exotic Car Club. We all got together, and it was like, you know, like a lot of people went till 3 o'clock in the morning. Like I slept over. I just grabbed one of the bedrooms and fucking passed out around about midnight. And I had to get back here to do that show with Andrew because he's in Dubai, and I can't remember what the time difference is, but it was like, I don't know, 8 o'clock his time and like 10 or 11 o'clock my time. I wasn't feeling my best, but I was still happy with the outcome of that podcast. I thought it was a good interview at the end of the day. So
Yeah,
This is a really good
and
interview.
he complimented you on the quality of your questions a few times.
yeah, well, I'm pretty intentional whenever I have a guest on. Like if I want to talk to somebody on a podcast, I get a lot of people like, oh, you should talk to this person. You should talk to them. I don't know who they are. Like if I don't know you and I don't pay attention to, I don't know, like a book you've written or videos that you put out, I really don't have questions to ask you. So that's why I don't have a lot of guests on that podcast. It's like I only put on guests when I think there's something that it's, like it's going to be interesting or it's going to be worthwhile. So from time to time, I still do them solo now too. So I'll do some solo shows just on topics that I think would be cool on the Playing the Win podcast. But yeah.
You don't approach it from the gotcha angle either, which is really nice because you can see your guests visibly relax, get into themselves, and actually be forthcoming with their answers. And I think that makes for better.
Well, that's the game that everybody else plays with a guy like Tate, right? Is gotcha, bitch. And it's like, that's basically what Piers did during the entire conversation. And Andrew was like, really? Like, I mean, I wouldn't have been as kind to Piers as what he was, I don't think. So, I mean,
Pierce is never kind to his guests. At least back in the day, he wasn't.
No, he likes.
I thought the interview was, I thought it was your best ever, to be honest. It was enthralling from the start to the finish. And I think, I messaged you guys. I said the other interviews you done were transactional. This was kind of genuine burning desire. 2 of you guys into the same thing, back and forth. And I watched the first half hour with my girl, and she's like, "What's so controversial about these guys? I don't want it all. I don't want a career." She's like, I just want to look pretty and be feminine." I'm like, "Yep, perfect."
That's how most girls think too. When you ask them to be honest, and they are.
Yeah, but they don't get there until they've sort of been dealt like bad hand after bad hand after bad hand in life, and they realize, oh, all of this getting degrees, framing them in mahogany, chasing careers, buying my own shit, maintaining my own shit, defending myself. It's not really what they seem to want, at the end of the day. They actually want what conventionally has been going on for a very long period of time. It's just now that they've been, like women have been lied to too. Like we say this all the time, like, society lies to us. It's like, do this, that, and the other thing. And it's like, yeah, who does that serve? The state. Who does that serve? Like their large scale narrative. It doesn't serve you as an individual. That's just my take.
Do you guys think there's benefit to getting, I don't know, drunk every once in a while, or drinking a few quantity of alcohol?
I'll tell you this: if you don't touch it very often, like I do, it took like probably 3 or 4 drinks to put me on my ass. So
Yeah, you're a pretty cheap date after you take a while off.
yeah.
Yeah. And look, coming from an Irishman, Dragos, I come from a country where, and I always tell people this. Do you ever see the movie Highlander?
Yeah.
Remember when he came back from the dead in Highlander and the village, they tied him to a piece of wood and beat him out of town. That's what happens where I come from when you tell people you're not drinking. So but one of the things is, and this is an honest benefit of a men's community. You get together with a tribe of guys and you identify a problem, which is society and blue pill fucking land tells us that the only way you can enjoy your weekend is to get smashed. And a few of us have seen the negative side effects to it. And I said to the guys earlier, I like my whiskey, I like my gourmet wine. It's up there with my gourmet food. And I don't want to get to a situation where I can't touch it anymore. So we decided moderation. And again, I'll go back to 2,000-year-old philosophy. Like moderation is one of, if you can moderate yourself in any way or any aspect of your life, it's really beneficial. Anything that goes beyond the bounds of moderation becomes a burden. So you gotta just limit yourself and enjoy things without
50
going over
was
the
the
edge.
last guy that saw me put a few back. And how many did it take? What, 3?
4, I'd say.
Maybe 4?
Yeah. It was like Jesus. It's like you were like Stacy from college, who was 18 and had her first fucking Jägermeister. Like, there's big rich.
Yeah. Keep in mind, man, I was driving
it's-
that McLaren hard all day, before I saw you at that hotel, right? It was a
Yeah,
I mean,
you could have easily had a Louis Vuitton handbag and a mini skirt on you and been 18 at a fucking with a fucking sorority girls.
All right, thumbs up. Thank you, man.
2 more whiskeys and he would have. Let's get on that next time.
50
Jokes aside, the reason why I'm asking about this occasional alcohol consumption is that I've been in the trenches working on some projects, and I feel that anytime I get I don't see left and right, I just see forward, and I go out and have a few drinks, not to the point that I vomit or something, just like a few drinks to get more than tipsy. It gives me a fresh perspective on where I am and what I need to do the next day. It's kind of like a reset button, but I'm not sure how to explain this there. I mean, it's a utility thing.
For me, it's more like I'll go out for the social factor because I do the same thing. I'll put my head down. I'll go months without really looking at the world outside of me. I'll get a lot of stuff done. But then I start to get not lonely, but you get that social itch. Like, all right, I want to go out with the boys. I want to have a good time.
You're disconnected, right?
Yeah, I want to be a little irresponsible. And you do that, even if it's just a few drinks. I wake up the next day and not that I feel shitty. I don't drink to the point where I get super hungover anymore, but you just don't feel optimized. And then you get that internal dialogue like, Jaron, you fucking loser. Like, what are you doing? You got work to do. Now your day is off, your schedule's off, your sleep schedule's off. And it kind of gets me right back on track in the point that, okay, I took that little break. I indulged in that little distraction, but now I'm doubling down because I got a taste of what I used to do in my previous life. I remember in my early 20s, I would wake up on weekends and lay in bed just super hungover and think, how do people just get up and function normally on a Saturday or a Sunday? And then it got to the point when I was going through some real bad times where it was habitual. It was almost daily I was drinking. I was just like, how do people function normally? And now it's to the point where I rarely drink, to where I wake up, I'm like, how did I used to do this? How did I used to be hungover all weekend or every day? Or I was probably a functional alcoholic at one point. And I never missed work, never had attendance issues, never had any issues when I was in school or anything like that. But it got to the point now, I was like, God, I just feel so good all the time. I can't imagine not feeling this good all the time. And then you have that one night out with the boys and it reminds you, you're like, yeah, I need to not drink.
Well, why did you stop on it before the weekend finished?
What's up?
Jaron, why did you stop before the weekend finished? Like, why didn't you continue until Monday?
I got to the point, so especially during COVID, I wasn't drinking that much during COVID. I got really into the fitness thing when we got locked down, so I transferred one addiction for another. I went to smoking marijuana because it's a lot healthier in terms of if you want to have a six-pack, guys, drinking will not get you there, so you cannot do that. Weed will if you can manage the munchies, which I've been able to. In the group, I posted guides on how to manage munchies, but I actually haven't smoked marijuana since I was in California either. So it got to the point like, all right, it's kind of slowing me down a little bit. I prefer to be a little on the hyperactive side if I can, just because I'm so busy at work now. But for the alcohol thing, it got to the point where my dad's side of the family, my grandma and grandpa both died very early from alcoholism. And then all of my dad's brothers and his sister died from alcoholism. My dad's the only one alive, and the only reason is because from alcoholism in his 30s, he had dual renal failure, so he's been on dialysis for like 30 years. He smokes a lot, but I saw the writing on the wall. And my mom's side of the family, they're all super healthy and fit, and they all live to 100, and they're happy and healthy, and they have good relationships. So for me, it's very clear. Like, I have two paths I can go down. I can die a miserable death before I'm 60, or I can live to 100 and leave a legacy. So that was pretty clear for me.
Well, I've always said, like, most fun you can have with your clothes on is driving an exotic car. You can't do that while you're drinking booze. Some guys will try.
Fast cars and nice cars are expensive. Beer's fucking cheap.
But you can do it naked.
Yeah, we know how that story ends. There's plenty of rock stars that have gone out that way.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. But Dragos, you were saying about the reset when a bunch of us in the 1% went camping recently. When we all came back, we were all like, holy crap, that was a big reset. And it was only just a weekend. It was only 2 nights. Sometimes just getting with the guys away from the hamster wheel is a huge reset.
The hamster wheel is such a good image of how I feel and what I've been doing for the past 2-3 months.
Dragos, do you get to the point when you do that, like I alluded to earlier, where you feel a little guilty, like you relax, you have a little fun, you let your guard down? For me, I see it as an escape. So I meet up with some guys here this afternoon. I'll probably have a drink or two. I'm not going to get smashed because I've got shit to do tonight. But yeah,
no, I don't get guilty because I outwork most of the people that I know and that I work with. Like, I'm the one that's driving everything, and I'm the one that's getting everybody to get up and go. So all of them are like, take a break, man. But no.
Have any of you guys used? I mean, I don't have a segue in it. I sort of just talk about whatever comes to. It's like ADD. Oh, a squirrel. Have any of you guys used a treadmill desk before?
No, but I have a rising desk.
Yeah, like this one goes up and down. I was thinking about getting a treadmill and putting underneath there to get like the steps and movement and stuff. But I wonder if like the constant rocking back and forth when you're walking would be distractive. When you're doing like a show. Like, could I do the Unplugged Alpha show, stand it up, walking on a treadmill? Could I be on this right now, rocking back and forth, doing
or
that?
Or the microphone rocking?
Yeah, or is that just irritating to people?
You'd have to go half a mile an hour.
What's that?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mom.
You'd have to go really slow. You have to be going like sub half mile an hour for it. But I don't know if that would be. I used to have at my old job, we had like pedals underneath the desk. Like, we had little like simulating riding on a bike.
Oh,
we had those, and that wasn't just it was super fucking gay. But as far
with
as
an H,
thing goes,
yeah.
I mean,
gay
what
with
about
an
you,
H,
man? Like, I'm at a desk like all day, so I've thought about but having a standing desk and maybe something like that. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure they've solved for it, or I'm sure there's something out there where it's like that's a problem that people are going to have. It's like, well, I don't want to look like an asshole, like rocking back and forth while I'm doing a show or doing a conference call. So maybe there's one out there that has kind of solved that problem.
Yeah, it might be a speed thing. Maybe you just have to slow it right down. But I mean, if you're standing up for 90 minutes walking, you could probably get in a few thousand steps easily, right?
Easily.
It's like one of the best ways to maintain body composition too, as well, is like low stress, steady state cardio, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
You might want to watch David Goggins. He seems to be able to conduct every single thing he does while jogging.
Yeah, I know. Like, that guy's a monster. I don't know how he does that.
That guy's insane.
He's literally, like, he's insane.
I'm a little more on the lazy side. If I want to be lean, I just don't eat.
And Rich,
it works pretty well.
If you're working and you need to get your brain going, there's a reason why, I keep going back to my philosophers, there's a reason why the great philosophers walked and strolled, because when you're walking and moving, it stimulates your mind to start. No, not if you're running and burning, 300 calories a half an hour, but if you're walking and moving, it'll get your mind going as well.
It's true. Like, whenever I have an opportunity, especially when the weather's warm, I always throw on like the headphones and I'll do like Zoom calls or like coaching calls, like going for a stroll around the block or something like that, just because I can kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone, and I find that I'm more productive anyway, walking and talking. It's just outside, you get a lot of wind noise with the microphone sometimes, and the people can't always hear you.
I started doing this years ago, walking to and from the gym. And if you're a little further away than getting a pedal bike, it doesn't even have to be a mountain bike, like a single speed bike, so you get some resistance if you're going uphill. And then that cuts out my cardio, and I warm up, or I arrived at the gym, I'm already warmed up, and I've been doing that for 3-4 years now. It seems to work pretty well. And I always have like a crazy level of mental clarity even after the gym, as compared to before.
So I told you guys I hired a trainer to sort of improve, like what I'm doing at the gym, because I've been doing, like, since I was a teenager, I've been doing the same thing, and he's been very useful. From my experience the last 3 weeks, it's definitely been worth the money. And one of the things he was telling me is that if you want, because my legs never really grew, right? Like I used to squat 3 plates a side. My legs have never been big. People always make comments like, stop skipping leg day, blah, blah, blah. You want to see somebody that skips leg day? Gary skips leg day. That dude has calves that are, anyway. I'm not gonna.
I'm seeing him in about 2 hours, so I'll pass that along.
Yeah. Well, he knows because I saw him down in Cabo, and like we were cracking jokes about it. He's a good dude. I love the guy to bits. But
yeah, we're going fishing today.
But my guy was telling me, like, if you want thick legs, like if you want big legs, he goes, you have to stop doing cardio. He goes, all the cardio that you're going to get has to come from the workout. So riding your bike, going for runs, all that stuff, which is true. Because if you ever look at a marathon runner, they always have like skinny ass legs. But if you look at sprinters, like 100-yard sprinters, they've got massive legs, right? Or like those cyclists that do like the 100-yard or the 500-yard, whatever, like at the competitive sort of games, they've always got massive quads, right? So it kind of makes sense.
More anaerobic rather than aerobic. Well, one thing, I've got naturally big legs. I fall in the Gary camp, so I don't really have to touch them much for them to be huge. But to get them really shredded, I hired a trainer a few years ago during COVID too, just because bored as hell, nothing else to do. So we just trained all day. And after an intense leg day, I'd ride the pedal bike, the single speed beach cruiser, just peer to peer, back and forth. And I'd do it for time to like where I was really gassed. And that's what got my legs like cut to the point where I could see striations in my glutes. And that's the only time that ever works for me is right after leg day, do the bike. It sounds counterintuitive, but for me, you really gotta tear them up to get them to that point.
Yeah. So what's been happening this week, man? I always put in the description, and I mean, you guys in the chat can throw some stuff in there if you want us to hit on it, but I always just put in the description, the men chop it up on current events. So what's been going on this week?
That giant aquarium in Germany in the hotel exploded. Did you see that?
Was it like a terrorist attack or something? Like somebody attacked, or like climate change activists or something?
An Asian terrorist. The news always says that broke. An Asian man.
Oh, the glass just broke.
Yeah.
Oh, so they brought the glass from. So they brought cheap glass.
Normally, German engineers are the best in the world.
Well,
yeah, they must have.
There's a difference between engineers and the people that manufacture. Usually, most of the manufacturing happens in Asia, and it's done cheaply, right?
This is something entirely different. It was 5 or 6 story aquarium.
6 stories? Like 6 stories of water came crashing out?
Yeah.
Is there a video? Because that would probably be pretty awesome.
They got to have security camera footage of it, right?
Yeah, I don't think it's visible because it happened at 5 something in the morning.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But here is...
oh, hang on. There's a 46-foot high aquarium in the Radisson Hotel in Berlin. Is that it?
Yep.
Yeah, that's 8 stories.
That's crazy.
Oh, hang on. There could be a video housing 1,500 fish. Well, I guess they had a big sushi sale after that.
6.
Yeah.
Oh no, no. This is like an after it exploded. Yeah. There's no security footage, but it's like a big giant tube. It looks like.
Yeah.
Was it a catastrophic failure or a leak?
Oh, dude, the entire room is destroyed.
It's gone.
It's gone.
Yeah,
like the entire,
like an explosion. Like a
I'll put it up on the screen. Check this out. Hang on. Present. Share screen. Window. Boom. There you go. I mean, there's no sound with this, but pull it back over here a little bit.
Yeah, Germans are slipping.
That's what the room looks like right now. It's a giant tube that went up the center of the room, and the whole thing it looks like it just exploded.
Holy shit!
That's what it looks like. Looked like on the right over there. It was a giant tube.
It's like a giant beaker. I was thinking a lot wider for an aquarium.
Yeah, it's
last time there was that much damage in Germany. It was done by Bomber Harris.
Yeah, it was a result of Lancasters at night. That's
You saw somebody in Germany was preparing a coup to overthrow the government through violent means.
That's what the blue pill narrative told you. The reality was there was 25 out of a country of many millions who were old, grey-haired, cuckoo, lunatic fucking guys. And again, the governments have to put it out there that, we have to be fully in charge of everything or else this will happen. You really think 25 old, grey-haired fucks could overthrow the German government?
Last time this happened,
how did they try to do it?
They were preparing the coup to make the president or the chancellor not abdicate, give up his post and put somebody in their place. But the reason why this is interesting is that last time this happened was with Hitler. Hitler actually wrote Mein Kampf out of prison. So he wanted to do the same thing. He got into prison, and then afterwards is when he came to power.
I've been saying for a while, I wouldn't be surprised if that's in the German psyche. I wouldn't be surprised if those tendencies were to resurface due to recent political events in their country. I can see that happening in my lifetime.
You think so?
Yep.
I mean, it would take the right stimulus, but I know I've got a lot of family in Germany now. Behind closed doors, I hear a lot of them they're pretty tired of this crazy immigration. They're pretty tired of their country being pimped out to global powers. It's the same murmurings that happened in the early 20th century, which led to the Nazis' rise to power. So I could see that happening again.
There's a lot of those conversations happening in the UK too, because they're getting. I mean, there's I wouldn't call it an uprising, but there's a lot of noise being made with communities and the domestics saying we're tired of these mostly Albanian immigrants coming here claiming that they need refugee status. But I mean, the typical refugee status is you have to come from a war-torn country. There's no war in places like Albania, but they're just letting them come in.
Coincidentally, this is happening in all Western nations. It's happening in the United States, it's happening in Germany, happening in Britain, and it's happening in Ireland now as well. And the people have finally had it there. There was a community in Dublin called the East Wall, and it just happened. A lady pulled out her phone and started videoing 2 busloads of refugees and the guys got off the bus. Some of them were dressed better than I dress when I go out. And they were all military age men, and they were going into this office building, and the video went viral. And any of us who were, over 40, remember the Bosnian Serb conflict in Yugoslavia in the 90s. We know what refugees look like. Torn clothes, bewildered, bedraggled, down, people who were on the verge of tears. Okay, these guys are all arriving into Ireland, and an Irish girl the other night was sleeping rough, and she died with the cold. So people in Ireland are really starting to get pissed off now that people are coming in. And one of the refugees, guess where he came from as refuge? He he was in Greece first, and then he was in London for 10 years or so. So apparently there's war and famine all over London and Greece.
Yeah.
Also, this is cheap labor for a lot of countries, which is why they
do it.
Yep.
I always tell people down here in Mexico, because I'll meet people that are middle class, upper middle class, but they just don't make a lot of money down here. They make maybe 20, 15, 10% of what a U.S. wage would be for a similar job, same education level. And a lot of people down here, and personally, when I talk to them, they're more highly educated than Americans because they don't have those socialist indoctrination camps.
Yep.
Down here, if you lean socialist, it means you're lower educated, and if you're more traditional, that means you have a higher education. So it's kind of the inverse here. But I'll tell them all the time, why would you want to go to Texas and be a nanny for $2,000 a month, which is a good wage down here, but you'll essentially be poor in the U.S. And I let people know all the time, because I'll hear comments like, "Oh, if only I could go to the U.S., my dreams would come true." I was like, well, if you're unable to make good money in Mexico, then what makes you think you're going to go to the U.S. and make really good money? Because it's actually really easy to make money down here. They're a lot freer than the U.S. The Mexican government doesn't really give a shit. They just turn their head and you can do whatever you want. So free enterprise, it's wide open, the markets down here, if you have some business savvy to you. But I've always explained to people here, hey, definitely rethink that, because the liberals, the Democrats aren't on your side, and the Republicans did this shit too back in the day. They use you as a slave class. It's a modern day slave class. There's a case in San Diego recently where Oscar Mayer, the hot dog factory right on the border, they got charged. They got caught paying Mexican migrants like $2 an hour to work the factory lines, which you cannot live in California on that wage. Obviously, that comes back to the other side of the border. That's not even a good wage here. So it's really like modern day slavery, but a lot of people don't look at it that way.
Yeah, there's certainly a propaganda war being cast by Western countries like Canada and the US, suggesting that you can. I mean, I think the US is still a better place to run a business than Canada, for a whole bunch of reasons. But I mean, if you can't make money in, like where you're at, like unless you're like in the middle of some shithole country, like total third world shithole country in like Africa or like South America where like inflation is blowing up. I mean, you should be able to make money where you live for sure.
I think you guys are in a bit of a bubble, the entrepreneurial bubble. I know a few people that work for my dad's company that went to Canada, immigrated to Canada, and it was actually a lot easier for them to grow and become like higher wage than they were in Romania, because it's just the way the system works. And if you're not an entrepreneur and you don't want to be better and you don't want to chase excellence, which is like most of the population of this planet, it's a lot easier to grow and to make more money in Canada or the US than it is, for example, in Romania.
Does Romania have a caste or a class system like a lot of Latin countries do? Like all of them do?
What's the tax rate in Romania on your income?
So for personal income, it's a bit different. It's like 8% or 5% for dividends. It's going to be 8% starting January 1st. 10% for income from the stock market or crypto.
So is it 8% across the board, or is it on a tier? Like if you make $250,000, then you're paying 50%.
No tiers. It's not progressive.
So it's not progressive. So it's straight 8% right across the board, just off your income. And then business taxes, like what do you pay in your corporation?
Business tax is, I think 16%.
Yeah. So all of that totally kills what you pay in Canada, right?
Yeah. Like what I wanted to say is that for me, it's the other way around. Like for me, it's a lot better to be in Romania and make money here, or produce whatever I want to sell here and sell it to the other parts of the world.
Yeah. In US dollars.
Yeah. And I'm working in a European country and I have all of the protection of the European Union, and my money's clean and I pay all my taxes because why not? I mean, for 10%, it's not worth it to do anything.
Yeah. It's peanuts anyway. So what's the big deal?
Yeah, I kind of have to agree with Dragos there. Like the European attitude versus the American attitude to business. It's like, when you arrive here, it's like it's open season. When I first arrived here, 24 years ago, every Irish guy I knew was hustling to make more money. Guys were like, you can start a business here. There was like, I worked for a company for 13 years in Ireland, and I couldn't, they wouldn't let me put the coffee on unless you're there for so long. And I remember my first few months with a gigantic construction firm in New York, the president came out of his office and he said, who put together the bid package on this job for this bank? I said, I did. He goes, grab his tie, grab his briefcase, come to the meeting. We're meeting the board of the bank. Smile, sit there with a pen and paper, just nod and don't speak unless you're spoken to. And I was like, I said to him afterwards, like, thanks, like that was an experience. He says, yeah, he said, this isn't back home. You're not going to be kept here. You're going to run with the hounds here.
Yep.
Yeah. There's advantages, disadvantages to everything. I still think that, the grass is always greener where you water and fertilize it, right? Like you can find ways to do things. I mean, there's certain things where it's like, okay, this environment sucks. The tax rate's too high. Like weather sucks. Political environment sucks. Wokeness sucks. Time to look for an exit. Yeah. But
every business I know in Ireland, Rich, and I do this a lot. There's a lot of Irish business companies I know. Their dream is to get into the US market. Everyone's dream is to break this fucking market.
It's a big market.
I mean, like
I get
population wise,
over 50%.
it's huge.
Yeah, like I get over 50% of my views from the US, right? Like I think last time I looked at my demographics, like 6.5% come from Canada. and the U.S. population is only 10 times bigger than Canada. It's like it's a lot busier in the U.S. Like I get more views in the U.K. than I do in Canada.
Yeah. It's also like everything's more developed. Like the system is developed. Like, for example, if you wanted to create a bottled water company, like in Romania, you would have to create your own distribution network and start talking to marketplaces and vendors and stuff like that. And the progress to penetrate this market, to get from a 2% market share to a 10% market share, would be very hard, even though your product would be good enough. In the US, if the product is good enough, it's just a matter of negotiating the contracts with the distributor and vendors and everybody else, to the point that once you get those things done, then you don't have to worry about the distributor.
Well, let me just chime in on that for a sec, because one of the things that you got to accept about Western policies, especially Canada and the US, and even more so in the US, it's a very litigious market. So for anything that's a consumable that might lay claims to improving health, dealing with wealth or credit. Like one of the reasons when I did the supplement line, I didn't do my own supplement line or create my own supplements. Like I white labeled an existing brand that already does very well for doctors and naturopaths and all that sort of stuff. Like the ingredients are all like, I don't want to be responsible for any of that. They've already vetted all that. They've tested it. But if you have anything out that's like, drink this water because it's alkaline, or take this supplement because it'll boost, like something in your body, then you better make sure that it represents what you're talking about, because you will get your ass sued into the Stone Age, right? Like people look for ways to make up reasons why they can sue you, especially in the US, not so much in Canada, but you got to jump through all these legal loopholes. Like if you wanted to do like a spring water company, then you'd have to go through all these environmental testing, like probably years of paperwork and approvals and like all this stuff for forever. Like, one of the tenets that I always talk about, especially in my School of Entrepreneurship, which, shameless plug, by the way, opens at the end of this month again. You guys should be on my email list if you're not.
Merry Christmas, guys. Get in.
Yeah. I mean, for the new year anyway, but I'll put the ticker down on the bottom, get on the email list, is, an easy, lucrative, fun business doesn't invite the state or the government or the attorney generals or any regulators to assess what it is that you're doing, right? So if you say, rub this cream under your eye and lose 20 years of like wrinkles, or pop this pill and, don't be fat, sort of thing, then trust me, you're going to have serious problems. Like I've seen a lot of dudes out there, especially in the nutraceutical space. Like I had this one friend that I was on this drive with once with a bunch of entrepreneurs, and he was selling this cream that would make skin tags like fall off your body, right? And it had all the natural ingredients like witch hazel and all that sort of shit. He was telling me the story and how it works so well, and he gave me a sample when I was down there, and I used it because I had a skin tag, here. And then like later on, he's telling me how the government basically shut him down because competitors through the government forced him out of business because they didn't like the natural product, because they want you on their subscription with their patents and all that sort of stuff. Like anything, like the economy is very, very complex, right? So you want to stay away from things that could potentially be like, don't create businesses that are problematic. Don't invite women into your life that have red flags. Like it's kind of like that, if you know what I mean.
The government's a cartel in that space. I told someone even yesterday, like they don't have a lot of mental illness down where I'm at. I think this is personal opinion. I think it's largely a cultural thing because shit happens. You have death in the family. There's a lot of traumatic stuff that happens to people in Mexico. I talked to a girl the other day who was telling me that she had recently been violated, is the word they use in Spanish, at gunpoint. And I've heard that story a lot. That's actually very common for women down here. So when they have these feminist march, femicide's a big thing. You never hear U.S. feminists talk about this because they're not really into like actual women's rights and safety. But in Latin America, that's a very real reality for women. But you talk to these girls, and they're not all traumatized. They're not all screwed up. And I asked them, like, hey, what's the remedy? Did you have to go to psychology? Did you what'd you do? Like, what happens when these traumatic events happen in this culture? And I've heard from a couple of people, girls and guys, that the treatment for that is psilocybin. It's 0.25 milligrams for a 28-day.
Psilocybin.
Yep, or psilocybin. Yep,
Yeah.
0.25 milligrams for 28 days, and that is the
Microdose.
depression treatment. And
Yeah.
that's it. It's one and done. There's no ongoing SSRIs or anything of that nature. And when I describe how the U.S. drug market works, how there's two categories. There's good drugs, which are legal drugs, and there's bad drugs, which are illegal drugs. Although a lot of the better drugs are like the actual medicinal remedies fall into the illegal category still. So I view it as the way Mexicans understand it. Well, the FDA is really just a cartel, and
Well, you can't patent a plant, right, or like a fungus, right? But psilocybin has been studied for decades now, and it's been proven to be very effective. For things like PTSD, alcoholism, addictions, depression, anxiety. But why sell psilocybin in a capsule that anybody can sell for cheap when you can patent some fucking SSRI that fucks with your dopamine and serotonin levels?
The psychologists sell them here in capsules, and it's just it's the
is it over the counter
treatment
there? Like, I mean, like you can just get psilocybin and you're good to go.
You can't go to the pharmacy, but like pretty much any psychologist can get it for you, and it's dirt cheap.
Really? Yeah.
I mean, it's a fungus. It grows out of shit.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's probably going to go that way in North America pretty soon. Like, I know there's some states that are going to be like, I think in DC, right? Like in 50, like where you're at, like you can buy it over the counter, right?
No, I'm not in DC, but yeah, there's you can get it in packets, like fucking bag of chips. You can get it.
Right.
It works.
So, I mean, like
it definitely works.
Yeah, so it's getting there.
Oh, it does. Yeah, it's great for productivity too. I do the microdosing, once or twice during the week, just for kind of like a little mental reset, and gives you clarity.
Microdosing, super productive for that. Yeah, tested that as well. Absolutely. Somebody was asking here in the comments, or let me just scroll up here. Dude was asking about news sources. He said, any guys looking for an alternative source for internationally used news not produced by woke milquetoast establishment teleprompter readers?
I watch foreign news sources, so like Al Jazeera or any of those ones, especially ones that shit on the U.S. Sky News in Australia is pretty funny too, because they always make fun of the state of U.S. political affairs, and I appreciate watching foreign from my perspective poking fun at my home country.
One of my I would counsel someone like that to just call up one of your buddies who's plugged in or not plugged in, and say, what's the real story here? Well, you're going to have to go out and get 3 or 4 different news sources from both ends of the spectrum, and then figure out yourself where the shit's at, because you can't trust anything now,
Yeah, you can probably trust about 10% of what you're seeing on mainstream media and the news, as being factual. The rest of it's just a stretch of the truth, or it's designed to sway you in the direction that the matrix or the female first primary social order is trying to move you in, right? To betatize you and feminize you and pussify you, right?
I had a guy who was in politics since he was 17. He's passed on now, but he was a fucking genius. And I got on really well with him. He was in his fucking 70s. And he would take the newspapers every day, and he'd sit down with his coffee, and he'd get a pen, and he'd cross out the headline, and he'd write what it actually meant. And he'd go through the whole front page of the New York Times and do that. And I used to just laugh reading it, because it was hilarious. It was like, literally, with the way everything was distilled to Orange Man bad. And everything is like that. And he had a famous phrase he told me. He said, the point of the news is not to tell you what's happening. It's to prevent you from knowing what's really happening.
That's true.
Yeah.
Dude was asking about this documentary called Died Suddenly. Have you guys seen it?
Nope.
Is that the one where I saw one a few weeks ago? I think it's the one he's talking about. You can find it on like Rumble and other sources like that, but it's like an hour-long docu sort of film about these blood clots they've been pulling out of cadavers when they're preparing the body for burial. They're like these long-ass, like basically boogery, sticky, like rubber bands sort of thing that are clogging up the arteries. And they've never been around prior to, the beer bug sort of situation when they mandated, jabs under duress. Yeah. I think that's what he's talking about. It's I don't know, like is what it is, right?
I had a friend who recently died from the jab down here. She was I went to the school I went to in college like 15 years ago. It's a really good medical school. In fact, a lot of American and Canadian doctors are trained down there, and they just never tell you. They went to med school in Mexico, but it's very well known. And she'd been a friend of mine for, going on 20 years, but she had a lot of trouble this summer. She came to visit a bit, and she was telling me like, hey, like we know the jab, again, they don't have as much propaganda down here, and the propaganda they do have, they know that they're being lied to because they have a 500-year history of corrupt governments and being lied to. So it's kind of like, okay, yeah, you know, the wool's being pulled over our eyes. But she had a really hard time. She's like, hey, if I don't get the jab, I'm going to lose my job at the hospital. But I know, like, I've seen the data. I've seen my patients come through, young, healthy people, like within our age range and demographic. She's like, Jaron, I'm really having a hard time with this. And you know, she left this summer. I hadn't talked to her in a couple months. And then on Facebook the other day, I saw that they're having a memorial for her that she kicked over. She was a smoker though, so that was a bad thing. Like a lot of doctors smoke. I've noticed that, but yeah, she had the whatever it was, heart attack, stroke, and other than the smoking, she was in good health.
Yeah, there's a lot of manipulation going on. Like I got this earlier this week, but if you search for thirst trap, and I checked this in my region too, and the exact same thing came up. This picture with this description: a thirst trap is a type of social media post intended to entice viewers sexually. And then there's a picture of a dude doing a selfie in the mirror. We all know that that's not what a thirst trap is, but they're trying to manipulate you. They're trying to change the narrative to make you think that it's something else when it's actually not, right? That's just how they run.
Anything that's going to pose, I mean, we all know that anything that's going to put women into any sort of compromised or bad light is going to be squashed and is going to be quashed immediately. Like I went back and I found an old interview you did with some dude, I don't know, maybe like a year ago. Guy's name was like Mac or something like that. And you guys were kind of going back and forth, and it got pretty contentious. He was all about like statistics and data and show me this and show me that. And we get that stuff all the time. Like even when I do my stuff and when Jared does too.
Oh, is that the dipshit that fucking framed me?
I don't know. Guy had glasses.
He was like going on about like, you know, single moms. And I'm like, and he's asking for stats. And I'm like, yeah, well, if you would have told me this is what you want to talk about, then I would have had them ready.
Right. And then it just turned into, but one of the main points, it's like these people have nothing to gain for putting out any sort of statistical data around how poorly kids are doing in single mother households or anything that's going to paint women in a negative light. I mean, some of it's out there. I mean, I'm sure it's a lot worse than it's actually being reported. But even when we talk about women's propensity, promiscuous women, and how it affects brain chemistry and how it negatively affects their ability to pair bond and things like that, that's not true. That's bunk. That's never been proven. There's no studies. It's because who's going to risk their entire career?
There has been studies.
Well, there's been some, but there hasn't been. There's not a ton of info out there. There's not a ton of research.
Well, here's what I got, Moff. You know, women that have a promiscuous past are more likely to be anxious and have depression than women that don't. We also know that women with a promiscuous past are also more likely to divorce in a marriage and be unhappy in a marriage too, right? So there's a lot of connections there.
Sure,
and you don't need the stats. Just I was gonna say, you don't need the stats. Just go out in reality and meet these women. Like they're all around you. You don't have to date them. Just talk to them, and you'll figure out pretty quickly within the first minute or two. Like, oh yeah, this generally rings to be true.
Yeah, but most guys are Sims, right? So they look the other way.
Yeah, and that was the point. It's like, first of all, like, one of you guys don't know. You can know how to read a study, much less use it to apply to your everyday life. And for two, you're not going to find a ton of stuff out there that's going to go against the grain of what is the female narrative. So it's almost a waste of time to even be having those conversations around statistics and data because it doesn't exist.
Did you guys see this other piece that I shared, during the week?
Yeah.
The title of it is "Ontarians Unvaccinated Against COVID-19 May Be More at Risk of Traffic Crashes," study finds. Like, again, they're trying to convince you that if you don't do what they tell you to do, that you might die in a traffic accident. Like, I think the chances of you having an accident probably due to like cardiac failure are based on what we're seeing out there now in the world as we experience it, right? Like, reality can't be told, it has to be experienced, right? Like, as we see it unfolding right now, you're probably more likely to have a cardiac failure from being jabbed than being unjabbed, right? So it's like
that's common knowledge now.
Like, where are they trying to take you with this exactly?
Yeah, there's Dr. John Campbell. Maybe you have spoken about him before on the channel. He does
he's that older British guy that talks about it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And he actually has data and studies and actual hard data about this subject. And it proves exactly what you've been saying.
I'm surprised he hasn't been deplatformed the way that he sort of, communicates these ideas.
He has once.
he has he?
Well, they usually let one or two through so they can show an example like, oh, look at this idiot, and then the ones that actually are getting some traction, they shut them down pretty quick.
Well, I think they shut down Robert Malone, Peter McCullough, like both of these doctors either fully or completely got deplatformed from the social media sites. I think Twitter's one of the first ones to bring them all back. Like even when I did a podcast, you guys probably don't know this because YouTube took it down within 24 hours of it going up. But I did a podcast with Dr. Peter McCullough, the same guy that was on the Joe Rogan podcast.
Yep.
For like 4 hours. I talked to him for like an hour, maybe like 90 minutes or something like that. Like it was literally up for like a day, maybe a day and a half, and they took it down. And I got a strike against my channel because of it, right? And it's like I'm talking to the foremost authority on heart conditions, heart failures, and his experience with jabs. And it's like but you can't do that, right? Like they don't want you to talk about these things. It should be pretty clear and obvious to people by now.
Yep. But Twitter is doing a lot to remedy the situation.
Yeah, thank God for Elon Musk. I mean, I paid for the stupid blue check mark, not because I wanted a stupid blue check mark, but I want to support his business, right? Like I think he's doing something at least better for the world by letting more information flow more freely. And the other benefit too is you can upload up to 10 minutes of video onto Twitter when you've got that stupid blue check mark, which is I think limited to like a minute or a half if you don't.
Yeah.
So it would be interesting to see if he can turn Twitter into a competitor for YouTube.
And he's reinstating people, man. I mean, he's bringing everybody back. I mean, there's
Huff Daddy's back. Aubrey Huff
like,
is back. He just got back on
nice.
yesterday. Yeah.
I mean, there's guys that were doxing Elon Musk's location in real time.
Yeah.
And he was like with his kid, and he even brought them back. I mean,
yeah,
stuff like that. Like he's just like, okay, it's the free market as far as information goes.
There's something interesting about that, in the sense that the guy that had the page that was tracking his airplane, he only showed how do I say this? Like the public information is outdated, but they had a way of monitoring the transceiver on the airplane, and that's how they got real-time information. Now, according to Twitter, that's against the rules and regulations of the terms and conditions, right? And they got suspended, this person that was tracking his jet, but also the journalists that tweeted and shared this information, right? And now there's this narrative that I saw with even a European MEP saying that look, you're fighting free press. This is the free press that you want to show to the world. And it's like, dude, it's so obvious. And his son nearly got injured or something because of this guy that jumped on their hood. Like, I mean, he's one of the richest people on earth, and his son got attacked, and that page got put back on Twitter. And if that's not free speech, then I don't know what is.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see how that unfolds with Twitter. I think that this could be a very interesting next couple of years. Like he's reinstated a lot of people that were deplatformed. The Twitter files have shown that the information that was censored and hidden from the public certainly would have had an impact on the last election. There's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes that is slowly coming out. Of course, most people don't want to see it. They don't know. Like I guarantee if I see I'm going to see my parents this weekend and they just watch the mainstream news. And I always ask my dad, about like stuff that's on the news. I'm like, hey, so did you hear about this, with so-and-so? Like I'll ask him about the Twitter files to see if he's seen that on the mainstream media shit. And I guarantee he'll be like, no, I haven't heard about any of that because he just tunes into like BBC shit and like common sort of like mainstream sort of narratives.
People in my extended family are the same way. My brothers are both super based because they're into they're fans of yours, Rich, and they're into a lot of the same stuff I do. And we talk all the time. But
I wish my brothers were fans of mine.
Oh God, yeah, I saw that in the group. But like my extended family with the COVID stuff, the first year they're super annoying. Every day swab, like when I go back for Christmas, swabbing the nose, doing this shit, and I'm like, hey, you guys realize this is bullshit, right? This is largely blown out of proportion. It's largely an exaggeration. Second year, not as bad. And it got to the point where I think at one time I asked my mom or asked someone in my family, I was like, hey, it's pretty clear this is bullshit right now, right? And I was expecting an apology. Of course, you'll never get an apology from these people. No. But I heard comments from a couple people across my extended family like, yeah, we know, but it's better just not to say anything. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, that's the general pulse of the American public. Just put your head down. Just do it. Just do what you're told. Don't stand out. Don't stand out of line. And I can't imagine living life that way. From day one. Even in California, in March of 2020, when everyone was locked down, I could feel the tension of people. Like it was a party for the first 2 weeks. Everyone went to the beaches, house parties galore because everything else was shut down. It was actually really fun those first 2 weeks of COVID in California. And then they shut down our beaches. And then you can feel the tension in the air. And I remember telling a black buddy of mine, I was like, hey, by the end of the summer, we're going to have race riots. He's like, bro, no way. I'm like, watch, they're going to invent something. And when it happened, he called me. He's like, get the fuck out of here. He's like, how'd you know? I'm like, how'd you not know? How do you not see this coming? Because the media tells you what they're going to do at least a year out. They start stacking the deck, and you can see these stories. They start to come up. You know, they're way down the list, but eventually they give them more life. They throw out their feelers, like the election thing too. A year out, they're saying, "Oh, we're going to have an issue with the mail-in ballots, and this is what that looks like." I'm like, "Okay, well, this is what they're going to do." They reveal their hand before they play it.
Yeah, it's so strange that they, and I'm just going to do like the they in quotations, have more power than what the president of the United States has. Because when Donald Trump was the president, he didn't do anything about riots. He didn't do anything about the George Floyd stuff. He didn't do anything about social media censoring him. All that, I'm going to drain the swamp and make things better. It's just a whole lot of masturbation. It was a lot of talking, a lot of hot air. Like, not even the president is in the driver's seat. They are in the driver's seat, running the entire narrative behind the scenes.
And they've used yellow journalism forever. In 1898, that's what started the Spanish-American War, the sinking of the USS Maine. I think for Vietnam, the fishermen shooting at the fish or whatever, that they kicked that off. What was that? The Gulf of Tonkin. So they've used the media for nefarious means historically. So it's not a new thing. And I love it when you talk to modern people. They're like, "Oh my God, I can't believe the world we live in." And I always retort to them, "Well, this is how people have always been. If you read back through history, the same things are happening over and over. It's just the stakes are being raised because we're in a globalized marketplace, whereas before, it was a little more local."
Yeah, it's just the reality of the world, man. Like, you're going to be black sheep when you unplug. You're not part of the. You're not part of them. Yeah, you're not popular. You're not part of them.
But you're happy.
You march,
I've noticed that.
Yeah. You march to the beat of your own drum. You get what you want out of life, and you're definitely happier. You're not a tool of the matrix, as they would say, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Speaking of tools and the matrix and all that sort of stuff, I did a Twitter thread post on the gals in the Mano Swamp because somebody asked me during the last Unplugged Alpha show what I thought about. There's some chick on the internet that's doing some like wife school or something like that, and she's a total thought. She's gonna like try to, I guess, convert women into like housewives sort of thing. But it's like, when you start to look at all these gals that are in the Mano, I don't know if you guys saw that.
Yep.
Yeah.
What, the thread? Yeah, we saw it. It was very good.
Yeah, I saw the thread.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna kind of do a Hitchhiker's Guide to the Manosphere show on the Unplugged Alpha on Monday, because it's been a year since I've been in that space, and I just see it. Like, people still ask me about it. Why'd you leave? Sort of thing. What do you think of this person, so and so, doing this new wife school? It's like, all right, you want to hear my opinion on all those things and what I think of it? Let's do a show. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Mano Swamp. I'm gonna lay it all on the line for you guys Monday night. How about that? How's that?
That's a great topic, because a lot of times, obviously I came up through that space, which a lot of your followers probably did, and I watched all sorts of content creators, and it got to the point where once all the drama started happening, and then I started excelling in my life too. So like when you don't really have much of a roadmap to the world, you just want anything to help you feel better, especially when it comes to forming a new way of thinking or a new framework internally in yourself. Mm-hmm. And so I'd watch all of these guys, and then it got to the point where I realized, okay, well, I'm doing pretty well, and like this guy has something wrong. Or a lot of them, you started. Of course, when you don't have shit going on in your life, you can't really see these things. But as you start getting some wins under your belt, you start looking at some of these guys like, okay, there's some toxic personalities here. Or some of these people, like Rich, you mentioned, they're suing each other all the time. They're squabbling. It reminded me of my middle school schoolyard. Like when you get off the bus and you show up to school and you have all the circles like of the popular kids and the jocks and the nerds and the band kids and whatever. And it started driving me nuts how all these factions and these subgroups started splintering off in the space, and they're all talking shit about each other. And then I realized, okay, well, they don't really care about men's self-development, because if they did, they would squash this shit. A lot of the squabbles are completely ridiculous, and they're unfounded. It's really just, it's a giant pissing contest on the internet. So that really turned me off to the space, which sucks. I'm trying to get into it. I'd like to collaborate with more guys, and I think there's a lot of guys, smaller guys like Moff and myself, that are coming up that come through other groups of guys, because I've talked to a lot of them. But yeah, like they kind of ruined the manosphere to the point where guys I've collaborated with recently, they're like, hey, I came up through so-and-so's channel or so-and-so's group, but now he disavowed me publicly because I'm starting to get some prominence. I'm like, well, that kind of sucks. Rich, I don't see you ever doing that. Thank God I aligned myself with your camp, but it's really quite insane the way these people.
I won't ever like publicly call out names and specifics of dumb shit that they've done. I'll more so speak to the behavior. Yeah. I mean, a lot of them are guys that I showcased on my channel when all they were doing was writing fucking anonymous blogs or on Twitter or something like that. And I got them set up on YouTube, and then I got them set up on Instagram, and then I mentored a lot of them. So, I mean, to some degree, I'm somewhat responsible for it, but
the monster you created, Dr. Frankenstein.
I can't control what people do with their times and the childish behavior. I showed up, like I didn't look for the manosphere; it found me, and then it sucked me into it and said, "Oh, you're a manosphere guy now, right?" Sort of thing. And it's like, no, I was a successful entrepreneur. I had my life sorted out. I didn't need to be there to get validation or attention. In fact, I don't like it. I'm fine with doing this stuff like on shows and things like that, but I don't want people, coming at, I'd rather be anonymous when I'm in public, believe it or not. Like I'm more of an introvert, but yeah, like it is what it is, man. So I'll sort of kind of break it down to offer somewhat of a guide to what's useful, what's not useful, what to look out for, stuff like that. I think that might be something that's worth having a conversation about, because I had a lot of people asking me about sort of expanding on it, but it is what it is.
Well, once chicks started invading the space, that's when I knew it was over.
Yeah, well, they were kind of always there. We just ignored them. Like there was always one or two chicks with like, here's my whatever, how to get the girl that you want method sort of thing. And it's like, you're just a bimbo in a low cut top with a push-up bra and some makeup on.
You're just repackaging and regurgitating the same shit that we've been saying forever.
Yeah. And to be honest with you guys, like the stuff that that we talk about, when I say we, like when the guys are actually providing useful information talk about, it's not even new. Like one of the things that's fascinating is
it's repackaged.
Yeah, like they fight over, oh, this is my lingo or this is my language. Is it really though? Like I would imagine 15,000 years ago, there was probably a bunch of dudes that went out to war or went out for hunt and failed and didn't get the kill or lost a whole bunch of guys and sat there at a campfire at night and said, you know what, the gals back home in our tribe, they don't care about our struggles. They're the ones that pick the winners, sort of thing. Like I'm sure they noticed that back then too, right? So it's like, do you really own like certain lingo, and like there's really no new ideas out there, for being honest, sort of thing. But they fight over trivial stuff like that,
I've noticed a lot of the revelations, I say that in quotes, that I come across when in my early and mid 30s, where I'm thinking, oh my God, I never knew that before, and then I'll be falling asleep or something, and it comes back to me. It's like, no, my dad and my uncles used to talk about this, or I remember guys that I grew up around, like baseball coaches or Boy Scout leaders, when they had like their guy talk and I'd overhear it, they'd talk about this. But that's sort of the damage. I grew up in a single mother household, so they kind of put a shield around you for that information. Or if you overhear that stuff, like, oh, look at those savages, those men, oh, they're doing their man stuff over there, and you don't realize it when you're a little kid. But a lot of the things that I've learned in the red pill type content space, I realized, okay, no, I knew this when I was a kid. For whatever reason, it just kind of got censored out of my thought sphere.
Yeah. It's a really useful source of some information, but it's mostly produced by, I'll say this again, it's mostly produced by people that aren't good men or good at being men. And now you've got this swarm of chicks that just showed up. It's like OnlyFans for the red pill that are all, pretending to care. And it's like, if you really cared, ladies, you put on the pink pussy hats, march down to Capitol Hill and lobby the government to change laws that hate men, but they don't.
Yeah, now it's mainstream. It's Tate blew up, and now it's like, oh, now it's red pill's time to shine. Now it's manosphere. Now this has the eyeballs of everybody. So how do we capitalize on the attention economy as chicks, which is all they care about?
Until until the next mass shooting, which will always be blamed on the Manoswamp, happens,
although
then
it's SSRIs and
then they'll all disavow
single
it.
motherhood.
Right?
Yep.
Toxic men and emotionally unavailable, blah blah blah.
Yeah, I overstayed my my stay. Like one of the conversations I had with the guys when I was like, I think I'm done with the show and doing all this sort of thing. He's like, I'm kind of surprised that you're saying this now. You seem like the kind of guy that would have left, months or like a year ago. And he was right. It's just, I tried, I tried. So it is what it is.
Rich, how do you categorize the content you do now? Because I'm trying to figure that out too. I try to stay away from the red pill type topics, the red meat type topics, manosphere stuff, because I want to help guys out, and not even just that. It's more like I'm so curious about this stuff.
It's similar,
I've always been into this. Yeah. So I come across these things. I'm like, oh, I realize this thing. All right. You'll hear me say it all the time on this show. I noticed. It's really just me observing reality and then sharing with my boys. But how do you categorize this content? Because if it's not red pill, if it's not manosphere, if it's not laden with drama, I mean, we're really just shooting the shit. Like Amof said, swapping notes.
Yeah, like I don't work with losers or people that work with losers, right? So that's why I had to distance myself. But a lot of the conversations would be, viewed as very similar. It's just, when the guy texts me or calls me up and says, "Hey, I'm doing this conference. I'd like to have you as a speaker," and I ask him, who's going to be there and what the conference is all about. And I'm like, can't do it. Sorry, I don't do those things anymore, and I don't associate with those people. So, I have to do like a pass on it, or it's like, I want to have you on as a guest as a podcast. It's like, I don't work with guys, in this space sort of thing. So even though the conversations might be similar, I'm not there. So I don't know what to call it. Like, if anything, I think there might be a good opportunity for guys like us to sort of get together. And I mean, like the Daily Wire sort of put a lot of like TradCon conservative sort of guys together in one space and sort of put content, like in a club or like, behind like a subscription. That might be an opportunity, but I would never see the Manosphere sort of, collaborating to do that, because they're impossible to work with, right? Like they're impossible to collaborate with. There's always some dipshit idea that comes out of the woodwork that's like damaging.
There's a lot of divas in this space too. They approach it from a zero-sum game, like, oh, so-and-so's doing better than me. I have to destroy his reputation. and I'm watching this. I'm like, wait, aren't we trying to be better men? I admit that no one knows what the fuck we're doing in this life. We only get one of these things, so make the best of it. So like, I assume that other guys in the space, we're just trying to figure it out. We're trying to live life the best we can. But apparently that is not the approach for most other content creators.
Yeah, I don't know what to call what I'm doing. It's just, I just do my thing. I don't work with people that are losers or work with losers, and that seems to be an easy strategy to follow. I mean, maybe I'll build something beyond that one day, like a Daily Wire for the Unplugged. I don't fucking know. I mean, I'm not really thinking that far ahead.
That'd be fantastic, actually. I think there needs to be more of this stuff out there. And then more in terms of, you get a lot of, I mean, obviously it gets more views, like the short clips or the reels or things of that nature, but these longer form discussions where you can really hone in on a topic and break it down, I think that does add a lot of value.
Yeah.
To the right people. It's not as popular, but
dude, it's so powerful.
A lot of people need this. Like,
a lot of these conversations you'll never be able to have on public platforms if they keep censoring, if they keep deplatforming, if you just won't be able to do it. And the only place that you're going to be able to do it is going to be privately. And you'll have to host your own content. You'll have to have it behind a paywall. You won't be able to use mainstream, social media. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. Like, it'll be interesting to see how the whole Twitter thing unfolds with Elon Musk and where that goes. I think he's a good dude, and like, I don't like his electric cars, obviously, because I still love the internal combustion engine, but I want to see what he does with this whole like social media rebrand of free speech to see if it actually gets there, right? We'll see.
And if it sets a precedent for other platforms too. That's what I'm curious about.
What about Rumble?
I'm already on Rumble. Like, people tell me, like, like, what about Rumble? Why don't you go to Rumble? I'm already on Rumble. No. Like, Rumble mirrors all my content.
I'm not saying that you should get on Rumble. I'm just like, do you think it's not a solution to this kind of issue?
It's
the UI UX isn't there.
It's still centralized. Like, if that guy, Chris, decides that it's more profitable for him to change the narrative and not have certain people on it, then it could go sideways. But I mean, like, he took Tate on when he was deplatformed. From what I understand, there was a deal made. He endorses it, and I don't know if it was a stock deal or if it was a money deal or whatever it was, but there was some kind of deal made. So it seems like Rumble is probably a good place to go. But the problem with Rumble is that's not where people are. Like the guys that are plugged into the matrix that need unplugging, that need like the answers, they're mostly coming across them on regular social media. Like the guy that gets, driven through the divorce grinder, doesn't get to see his kids. His ex-wife has alienated him, and he's living in his parents' basement, and all the money's going to his ex-wife while he never gets to see those kids. He's not going to Rumble for how did this happen and how do I fix it? Like, how do I whatever? He's
YouTube.
He's Google, YouTube. He's tripping across it. Maybe somebody sends it over to him, sort of thing. So, and I mean, the other problem with that too is if most of the eyes, if most of the attention is on places like, the mainstream media, if you go on another public platform and you express views that conflict with that, like you may be deplatformed, not for stuff that you've expressed on their platform, but on other platforms, right? Mm-hmm. On other channels, on other areas, right? So it's like these conversations still tend to remain underground or behind some sort of private community. Like, we've got our own private group with, these hundreds of guys in it, sort of thing, working on our own shit. The conversations we kind of hang out with and chop up on generals meetings publicly on YouTube is really just for us to have fun and sort of like talk about what's going on, but it's muted. Like we don't talk the same way that we talk in person or behind the scenes in our own group, right?
I was going to say, we're still just scratching the tip of the iceberg. Like the conversation Josh and Moff and I had, like a 6-hour conversation in San Diego a few weeks ago. Yeah. We really got into some meaty topics, like really started breaking shit down. Probably one of the better conversations. I think Josh and Moff mirrored the sentiment too I've had in a long time, but you cannot have these conversations publicly. I'm meeting up with my boys this afternoon. So other guys that do well in the dating department here in Mexico City, I've been meeting them every week. Actually, Rich, that show you had me on, I had a couple guys reach out to me like, hey, bro, I'm in Mexico too. And like, I've had similar experiences. So I have a group, like half a dozen guys. We meet up every week and we swap notes and we talk about, language and culture and, those types of topics. But we talk about stuff that I could never say publicly, like some really, it would be controversial. But when you live this reality, it's abundantly clear. It's right in front of your eyes. But I won't even mention the topics because it'll get this whole fucking stream pulled down.
Yeah, the stream will get banned. It's like, the whole us versus them stuff that Jack Donovan talks about in his books with masculinity and, like the way of men is the way of the gang sort of thing. And you have to sort of create these things if you want to build an environment where men hold other men accountable. There's no men holding other men accountable in the Mano Swamp. Now it's some chicks that show up, OnlyFans for the red pill, and a bunch of dudes that are fighting with each other with drama, right? And it's not getting better. It just seems to be getting worse. It's getting coverage, which is interesting, but I mean, we'll see how that unfolds.
Yep.
Bill the Butcher. Thanks, Bill. Appreciate it.
Yeah, that's an awesome avatar too.
Is that an actual historical character, Bill the Butcher, like some sort of?
Oh, I thought it was a dude from V for Vendetta.
Oh, is it?
No, Bill the Butcher's from Gangs of New York.
Oh, Gangs of New York.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
that's
I
right.
think that is him.
And I think it's based on real people and real events. I don't know. I think Bill the Butcher was an actual person though.
That's the other thing too. Is it's getting increasingly more difficult to find interesting, like, kick your feet up, watch a series that embraces masculinity and femininity and
1883. I binge watched that over 2 nights. That show is fantastic. Like it's really.
I'm only a couple episodes in, but I really like it. It's
I won't
better
do any spoilers. Oh yeah, it's much better than Yellowstone. But really, like these men set out on the frontier, and like you learn about the Oregon Trail when you're a kid or whatnot. But to see in real life, like, oh yeah, like once you leave civilization, everything is trying to kill you, and you get to see what that's like, from the weather to the animals to the natives to other bandits on the trail, and then you realize, oh yeah, this is how the world used to work. Not even that long ago, 150 years ago, less.
Yeah, it's not as safe as you think it is.
No,
you have this illusion of safety today because of what's been created by the state, right, and them. But it's an argument as far as how safe it really is, or how much freedom you actually have, or how much anonymity you actually have, or ability to maneuver that you actually have. I mean, you saw what happened when they created the scamdemic, right? All of a sudden now you can't go outside. You have to put diapers on your face. You got to stand on dots. if you don't take a experimental jab, then you're going to lose your job. You know, like all these, you know, like if that's what you really want, like that's what you guys vote for,
in
right?
California, they closed our beaches. I remember that first day they did that. I went out in the morning, went for like my little bike ride up and down from pier to pier. I was living in San Diego in Mission Beach. Went on the beach and I was just hanging out. And I was like, okay, well, I live in the neighborhood, so there's nobody like I like virgin beaches. So San Diego virgin beach, that's something I was like, all right, I'm not going to get this opportunity at any other point in my life. So went out on the beach and I could see all the way across the distance, like probably 300, 400 yards, this patrol car coming up to me, and the officer comes out. He's like, "Excuse me, sir, you know, you need to be social distancing." I'm like, "Dude, I was until you showed up. Like, what are you talking about?" And at that point, I realized society has lost their fucking mind. I always knew since I was a little kid that I was kind of a weirdo. This confirmed it. I'm like, all right,
imagine that you're
retarded.
a cop. Imagine that you're a cop, like you're a government. Like a state worker, and you put on your uniform and you strap on your belt with your gun and your taser.
I'm gonna go arrest people on the beach,
and I'm gonna go bother people that are alone on a beach, because mandates say that I have to. Like that's where we're at, guys.
Although, in all fairness, during those initial lockdowns, a lot of the San Diego police, because my buddies and I would go out and live life as normal. Like we'd have cops come up to us, like, "Oh, great, are they gonna hassle us?" Most of the San Diego police, like, "Dude, this shit's stupid. Like, just do what you're gonna do." They're all bros.
Even the chief of police here in Toronto, like I remember when the Ontario premier said that we have these regions and you can't leave these regions, and we're going to be we're going to have the cops enforce you staying within those regions. They can pull you over for no reason to check your address and your location and ask you why you're in that location, and there could be consequences. Like, he made this big announcement. The cops were like, yeah, we're not going to enforce that.
There's climate lockdowns now.
That's potentially going to be the next thing, right? Like, I don't think
it's coming.
They're talking about it. It's coming. I don't think that enough people are as gullible to that as they were the scamdemic. I think a virus is probably more scary than the reality of climate lockdowns, you know, sort of thing. Because I mean, like, you see these nerds with their stupid fluorescent jackets sitting in the streets of Europe blocking traffic, and like everybody's just like picking them up and throwing them on the side. They're like, you know, they don't have the patience for that. So it'll be interesting to see if they actually can execute on that strategy. But you're right, that will potentially be the thing. But what you guys don't really know, and I'll have to dig up the article. I got to do a video on it at some point. But the government's mandating in North America that all cars have to have a kill switch on them by a certain year. I think it's 2026 or 2028. And the argument that you know, they're of course going to use is, well, we don't want situations that are going to endanger the public, like a O.J. Simpson, you know, where we've got all these cop cars, we're chasing him down the highway in his Bronco sort of thing, or high-speed chases. Like, they want to be able to push a button and shut it off, is the argument that they're going to use. But that's going to escalate climate shutdowns, where
God, we don't even want to go get your cars down here.
And your stupid electric car won't move that you paid for because they turned it off on you.
And they're also wanting to put dynamic speed limiters on new cars sold in Europe, where depending on where you are and what the speed zone is, they can limit your maximum speed. Yeah, it's in the regulations. It's being proposed, but it's not being adopted yet.
You know what's funny about speed limits? There was an episode on Top Gear. I think they did this in Australia, but they were talking about how they created speed limits. Do you guys know how they did it? Like, it's
arbitrarily?
No, it's not. It's actually not an arbitrary number. Like, when they set the speed limit for 55 miles an hour on the actual highways, they didn't just like, 55 miles an hour seems like a safe.
It was during the fuel crisis, wasn't it?
No.
To see like
no. It was actually based on the safe stopping distances of vehicles. So in like 1955, with drum brakes with 7,000-pound like land yachts that needed to stop at a certain speed within a certain distance, they said, well, if this, like, you know, the average car has these types of brakes and weighs this, it's going to stop in a certain number of feet. So 55 would be a safe speed limit. But you have cars like a McLaren 720 that can stop in probably 20% of the distance that they did back in the 50s, or even the average Toyota Camry can probably stop in like a third of the difference of a car from the 1950s. But they never modified the speed limits. They've always left them the same because it's a means to control you. Oh, you're speeding, we're going to give you a ticket. I mean, the truth of the matter is, you go to Germany, you can do 250 kilometers an hour, 300 kilometers an hour safely, and your car can brake safely. You know, like, as long as you know what you're doing, you're not a moron. But speed limits don't have any true value today, really.
Then you have places like Montana or West Texas where no one really gives a shit. I remember I bought a Camaro years ago in Texas, in Houston, and afterwards, like the guy's going down the list of all the specs, all the features, like, all right, here's your 2 sets of keys, here's your alarm, here's this, here's how you do that. And then at one point he's like, oh yeah, you have OnStar, but we deactivated that because we don't want the government tracking you. And I'm just like, oh yeah, like it totally makes sense. Totally a Texas thing. They're like, oh yeah, we don't activate OnStar, because the government can track you. And this was in 2012 when I bought the car, so Lord knows where they're going now.
But the speed limit also has like a few other components, and the fact that you can drive in Germany, in Deutschland, with no speed limit is always like the road is safe. The road is there's quality surface, right? Not only does it not have potholes, it's also you can brake on it, right? It's not the shiny type of asphalt that you get, for example, in Turkey, where you can
slippery.
brake. Yeah,
it's like the asphalt you get in Greece too. It's
exactly
it's slippery.
Yeah, and also it's about the reaction time of people around you. Like, for example, older people don't have the same reaction time, right? And I think raising the speed limit too much, I mean, more than, 20 miles per hour, like for example, from 55 to 75, but I think that could be a lot as well, would not give you the necessary reaction time. For example, if somebody like a pedestrian jumps in front of your car. So
what
are
the chances of a pedestrian jumping in front of your car on an autobahn or like a closed highway?
No, on the highway, there's ways that they prevent that. I'm just talking about, like, for example, raising the speed limit in the city.
Yeah.
And one of my first jobs, they put me because I was working on the public affairs team for a government agency, and on one of their formerly now since then decommissioned military sites, they did do a traffic safety study, and they realized the same thing. Like, from back in the day, the speed limits were 55, and they used to call it, the name of the military site, 500, because people, like, once you got past the barricade, there was no local police. You just you just cruised. And with these new cars, people, there are a lot of accidents, or especially when there's black ice or when it snowed or things like that. And so they did like a traffic safety study, and the results were pretty much that the speed limits need to be what people safely feel like they can drive on that road. So if it snows, naturally people aren't going to be going 100 miles an hour. That most drivers intuitively know the speed that needs to be traveled for the conditions of the road at any given time. So they had to redo their speed limits. They had to raise them at some points. Areas that were high accidents, they started putting in like those roundabouts or other features, design features in the road to where the drivers intuitively go the speed to where they need to go. And then anytime there's a discrepancy, the more of a discrepancy there is between what people naturally feel comfortable doing and what the actual posted speed limit is where your accident rates and your death rates go way the hell up. And those are the findings from that study.
All right. Got to kind of wrap it up, guys. I got a bunch of stuff I got to get done today. So, so just, quick shout out. Thanks. The boys that popped in. I know that, as we kind of go on, they got to move on and do stuff with their day, but yeah, we'll keep doing these as long as you guys watch them and we have fun doing them. But thanks guys for hopping in. I hope you guys have a good weekend.
Quick question before we go. What's the amount of time in percentage that the McLaren has been drivable? Like, how much downtime do you have? Like 50%,
my car?
30%? Yeah.
Almost none. My car's been very, very, very reliable. So the narrative that you guys hear about McLaren's not being reliable, I think is bullshit. Most people that I know that have McLarens don't have any problems with their cars.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was the older models?
No, like even the older ones. I mean, if you look at the forums, like even the 12C, which was the first one, the only real issues guys seem to have are the accumulators, which are not that expensive to replace. I mean, relative to the price of the car, they're not that expensive to replace and upgrade to the newest versions. But the hydraulic suspension on the 12C, these things are moving around dense fluid very quickly under a computer controlled environment. So they do go. But as far as like the engine and the transmission, all these things are very, very reliable. I mean, the only issue I've really had was like the glass tops cracking, and the dealer replaced them, I think 3 or 4 times under warranty. And it just got to the point where I'm like, this is stupid. Like can you guys just swap out the glass for solid tops? And a little bit of back and forth. McLaren authorized the repair, and they swapped out the glass for the solid tops. I can't remember what they're called, but yeah, but there's no glass there now anymore.
Yep.
The car's in storage, so you guys won't see it until the spring when I drive it again. But yeah,
I'm thinking about one.
Dude, there's the awesome cars, phenomenal. I would skip the sports series, the 570, and I would go right to a 720.
720. I think you can get one for about maybe 200,000 euro.
Yeah,
And
dude, they're awesome cars. Just make sure that you get it inspected to make sure that it's a good car. It's got the service history, all the docs there, the oil changes were all done. Generally speaking, the cars that seem to have been driven have fewer problems than the ones that have been sitting around collecting dust, plugged into like a trickle charger. So don't be afraid of a car that's got some miles on it. I mean, I have a friend that has a 12C with over 100,000 kilometers now. One of the other guys in my group, you can see some pictures in my gram of the Paris Blue 720. He's got close to 70,000 kilometers on his car. Mine's got 33,000 kilometers.
Nice.
Yeah, like you can drive these things.
Anything you recommend, or like any options that you recommend should be on the car, and some that you recommend that should not be on the car? Like,
They're
for
all
example,
pretty much the
hard
same.
top.
They're all pretty much the
Okay.
same. I would just stay away from cars with glass roofs because they do crack.
Fantastic.
Or if it
Thank
it
you.
has a glass roof, make sure they give you a warranty with it, because when it does crack, their cost here to replace them is 13,000 Canadian. So they generally sell it to you as a customer for 19,000 for that repair. So I would not get a car with glass roofs. I would either get one with a warranty if it has glass roofs, or get one with a solid roofs.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Anytime. All right, guys, there's your reasonable and logical buying advice.
Your
Go get
car
yourself
lesson
a
of the day.
McLaren
We should end all the shows this way, just as a throwback to your original channel.
720. All right, guys, have a good day. I'll see you guys later.
Yeah, cheers, guys.
Bye-bye.